Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Fatimah. I'm from our customer engineering team here at Google Cloud. I get to work with our customers and partners on helping them get the most out of Gemini Enterprise and Google Workspace and the fantastic Google Cloud ecosystem. We've got a really exciting session here for you today, and I think it's going to relate to a lot of you. We're going to talk about how a lean business with no dedicated data team went from spending hours digging through disconnected systems to having a conversation with their data in plain English in seconds. So I'm joined by the two people that live this story. Patrick, could you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name is Patrick Bobrukiewicz. I actually serve a dual role in life. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for our point-of-sale system, Nigel, and I'm the Vice President of Data Services for Thrive Restaurant Group. Now, Thrive Restaurant Group operates 5 different restaurant brands in 18 different states in over 200 locations spread all across the United States. And we do, just as Fatimah said, we have a lean data analytics team. We have a high volume of requests for data and insights from our teams. And my point here today is to share with you guys our experience in going through there, what it was like beforehand, and then also at the same time what it's like when you find a really great set of tools and a really great partner to help you guys get there.
Yes, and I'm Wiktor. I'm the Director of Data and Analytics. And you might be wondering why I'm up here in a kilt. And that's because I'm representing a Google Cloud partner called Cobri, which is headquartered in Scotland, hence the GARMs. You may see some of my colleagues with these kilts as well, walking the expo floor. So if you do see them, please say hi. And what we're going to do today is tell the Thrive story, walk through how we got to conversational analytics, and do a live demo so that you can see it in action as well.
So let's kick things off and set the scene with a little help from some of our generative models.
Audio.
At Thrive, it was table 4. Same face, same seat, 8 years running. His usual arrived before he even asked. The staff had stopped needing to be told. Patrick knew every face on that floor, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the ones who came in alone on a Tuesday just to feel a little less so. Now, you see, the numbers were all there. They just didn't look like the place they came from. And then Wiktor turned up. He didn't start with answers. He sat down, asked what mattered, and listened like he had all the time in the world. New pipes, cleaner data, and a small bright thing called Gemini that could finally answer the questions Patrick had been carrying around for years. He'd always known his restaurant by heart. Now for the first time, the numbers did too. And table number 4, he didn't know what changed. He just felt known, the way he always had. Wiktor had always known it would look like this. That was rather the point. Thrive, good food, good people, and data that finally looks like the place it comes from.
So that video was made fully using Google's frontier generative models, Nano Banana, Lyria, and Veo for the video as well. A video that would have taken a production team, screenwriters, animators, made end-to-end in an afternoon by one of our marketers. Now, anyway, we're here to talk about data. So why don't you give the crowd a lay of the land, Patrick?
Absolutely, happy to. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a picture of where we were when we kind of started into this process. We had multiple different disconnected data sources. We had our point-of-sale system and our back-office solution, which is kind of one data feed. We had our accounting and our ERP package, which was another data feed. And then, as I'm sure all of you guys in here can go along with me on this ride with, a lot of spreadsheets. Spreadsheets in all different kinds of places that we needed to pull together. So given that we're at a Google Cloud conference, make sure I'm not alone here. Put your hands in the cloud if you can here for me real quick. If you have data living in 3 or more places right now that you have to, thank you all. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. We live the same exact kind of problem. So every time that someone in our business would ask a question for an insight, that could have been something like, well, which item sold the most over the past weekend, or how did this particular thing impact, how did a change in our marketing impact our Saturday night profitability, you know, or something along those lines. Those questions would often take one of our analysts a fair bit of time to go into one or multiple of those systems, and typically you'd find yourself downloading a spreadsheet, putting it on one tab, go to the other system, another one, maybe a cross-reference table between the two, a summary page on the other side. I'm sure what I'm talking about here sounds really familiar to many of you guys, right? They'd have to go through that, and it could take hours of time doing that. And when you sit there and do it for that long, you really start to kind of question, right, what's going on. And here's the big kicker for us is we don't have a lot of analysts sitting around to do this. We have to pull it all together and bring it together, you know, ourselves to serve them. So with that, I want to now, when we went to market and we wanted to find a solution for these problems, this is really when we went through the transitionary period here of, well, if we don't like where we're at, what are we going to do about it? And when we went out and started looking for that, we thought we actually had a fairly modest ask. If you get right down to it, I thought, hey, we have the multiple restaurant concepts. Can we just get all of the data pulled into one place? Can we get to the data insights faster across those locations? That's really what we were looking for. The reality of what ended up happening with it, though, was a little bit different, and well, really a lot of it different. And we'll talk a little bit about why and how it was the most amazing thing ever when we get down into that part of it. So we got engaged with Google and Cobry, and we didn't know what was all possible. So I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to let Vic tell you guys just a little bit more.
Absolutely. So our job as Google Cloud partners is relatively simple. We connect the technology to the teams that use it and use it most. So we came in and did the work that Patrick and his team asked for. There was a few distributed, disconnected systems. We brought all of that into Google's centralized analytical database, which is BigQuery, stood up a few Looker models, and we made a few dashboards. That was the original ask. So for all the data professionals in the room here, this isn't rocket science, right? Data modeling, analytics engineering, and data engineering was an art and was a job since Ralph Kimball released his data warehousing toolkit 30 years ago, right? So this wasn't anything new. So we've been doing this for years now, and I wouldn't be talking to you in this room if this is where we finish this engagement up. We turned over many rocks during this project. We uncovered a lot of stuff, but there was one that was left unturned. Remember this moment, right, Pat?
I really do. I really do. We were sitting there, and I actually had just gotten done building my first chatbot, my first LLM myself. And it was right around the time of the release of conversational analytics, and then Gemini Enterprise right on the heels of that. It was a moment where I was like, man, I just did all this hard work, and I kind of looked over at Vic, and I was like, wait, you can just turn on the AI button? Like, what? Now you just click it on, and yes, we go? I was like, is that really where we're at?
Yeah, and I remember it too. I mean, we've been thinking about AI as this kind of massive, multi-year, expensive initiative. Custom machine learning models, the whole shebang. So the reality is that the button was sitting right in front of us in the UI, the Looker experience, and all we had to do was turn it on. It was literally just a toggle.
Yes.
So let's break down the architecture, and let's get a little bit technical. But it is surprisingly simple. You've got 3 layers. Looker is your structured, trusted, analytical data, your single source of truth. This is the foundation. It's hooked into your data warehouse or your organization's second brain, as a lot of AI savants like to call it nowadays. A lot of people use Looker as a point solution for business intelligence. Then on the other side, we have Google Workspace, and that's where your team already lives. Your Gmail, Docs, Sheets, Chat. No new tools to learn here. It's just a rich tapestry of generally unused, unstructured data, documents, emails, meeting transcripts, chat messages, and they all span back to when the organization first started using these tools. And a lot of the times, this could be years of uncovered, unused information. And then finally, the new kid on the block, we've got Gemini Enterprise, and this is our AI layer. You can almost think of it as like the harness. It sits on top of your data, understands the context, interprets natural language questions, and pullbacks answers instantly. So that's all it really is. It's 3 layers, all off the shelf. Chances are you're already using Google Workspace or maybe some of the Microsoft suite, and chances are you're using some BI solution as well. So this makes it really easy for us to just plug in Gemini Enterprise and turn it on. Now, this is the question we always get, Patrick, and I think that you actually ask this too.
I did, absolutely. I was thinking, we turned it on and I thought for half a second, well, we spent all the time taking the data itself and pulling it in here and the amount of time that we took building the marts and everything else around there. And I was like, what are we going to have to do? Is this going to take weeks, months? Are we going to have to reconfigure our drive? Are we going to have to hire some more analysts? Are we going to have to expand our budget with our teams? What are we going to have to do?
Yeah, and the answer is days, weeks, not months. You compare this to traditional AI where you're building custom machine learning models, hiring a data engineering team, spending months on just setup. Gemini Enterprise is pre-built and enterprise ready. It runs on your existing tools, so long as you have the point solutions that can connect right up to it, you can just turn it on and get results. So that's the difference. We didn't build anything from scratch. We just connected what was already there and flipped the switch. Google has done all the heavy lifting with the research and the science and the models, but we just needed to make sure that the right harness was in place.
Yeah, and that's really where the magic happened, quite honestly. It was that day. It was the day when we turned them on for the very first time. We took the MART, and the MART that we had in question that we're talking about had all of our profit and loss statement data. It was our P&L tool. We had just built it, and everyone's eyes opened when we started asking questions of it like, which location had the greatest variance in small weirs in period 4 of 2024? Here's your answers. It got even better later on when we asked some other questions of it too. But that aha moment, you think about that for half a second. Anyone could do that. I thought to myself as I sat in the chair, any one of our restaurant operators could do that. Not a data analyst, not someone that has spent years running reports or years being familiar with that particular system. But now anybody could do that. And when I really got to thinking about what that meant that you could reduce the cost of asking a question. And that's where the magic really started to happen.
All right, Patrick. Well, I think that actions speak a little bit louder than words.
They do.
So I'd love to show you exactly what this looks like practically in a live demo. So here I am with Gemini Enterprise, and this is connected up with a Looker agent and a Google Workspace environment. It's not hooked into Thrive's organizational data. This is a demo environment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a really simple question here. So what is the revenue over the past 12 months? And what I want to do is I want to tag in our Looker agent. So Looker is the BI stack that we're using, and I'm going to let this rip. So I've loaded this, or I've preloaded this agent. We built it using ADK with one of Gemini's thinking models. So it's using 3.1 Pro behind the scenes. And this is leveraging the Looker MCP. And what this is going to do behind the scenes is going to try and understand the question that I gave it. So it's going to think for a little while. So it has to understand what revenue is. It has to understand the date context. So what is the past 12 months? So it's going into our Looker MCP, and it's starting to do some initial queries. What is the data model looking like? What tables do I have access to? What fields do I have access to? And then finally, once it figures out where the revenue sits, once it figures out where our date sits, once it figures out the semantic layer, what it then does is it executes the query, passes it back to my orchestrator agent. My agent then takes the results, which are just raw results, parses them, and then spits it back out in a nicely readable and legible format. So this is thinking for a little while. It is going to finish, but what I've done is I've pre-prompted this just as you were coming into the room. You might have seen this. And here we see some revenue statistics for our virtual restaurant. Now, if I was just in Looker, if I was just in my point BI solution, this is where I would stop, right? I'd take a look at this information. I can see here that, we made a good amount of money. I see that there's a small dip here in September 2025. We went from, 4.3 million to 4 million, back up to 4.7 million. And this is where I'd kind of stop my conversation, because I'm stuck, because the answers lie in my unstructured corpus of information, which is in Google Workspace. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually tag out my Looker data agent. You've done your job, thank you. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to ask a follow-up question, such as, why did the dip in September happen? Question mark. Again, a really open-ended question. And with Gemini Enterprise and all the connectors that I've got available, let's say that I know that the answer is somewhere within my Drive file system. I'm going to make sure it thinks for a little while, and I'm going to let this rip as well. So traditionally, what would happen is you'd have to move out of your BI tool. You'd have to move into your Gmail, move into your Drive, and start thinking about, okay, what's happened in September? You might have to send a few emails out to restaurant managers. You might have to look through memos. You might have to look through your massive corpus of information that is completely unstructured and unsearchable. And with Gemini Enterprise, once it does its thinking, hopefully it comes to an answer, And finally, we've got our answer as to why our September dip happened. So we finished the campaign, so maybe that explains the dip. And also, we've got some severe underperformance at specific locations. But we don't just stop there, because again, this is grounded in your organizational information. And this is where I can move into the drive file system and actually see exactly what the offer was, when it was going to end, and see why this dip happened, grounded in my organizational knowledge. So not only did I ask the question from my structured data, which is great, and it's in Looker, and I can do that there, I can also pull that context out into a conversation, and using that context, then do a search in my unstructured information. This has never been possible before, but with Gemini Enterprise and the structured harness that we have here, we're able to make this happen. So, I don't know, a week, a couple of days worth of research as to why we have these underperforming locations condensed down into a few minutes and a few prompts.
All right. So what's that right there mean for us? Everything that Vic just went through there. What's it mean for us? For us, that could have meant potentially up to a 3-hour data dive, right? You could have been going through there, researching, looking for the emails, looking for that. You could have spent 20 plus hours in a dark black hole, never coming up with the answer. Truthfully, when we asked the question back, the response that it gave back to my question earlier about P4 of 2024, there was a few emails, and it linked back to an email, and it gave us some reasons why. The important part was not why it happened. The important part was that I noticed that those 2 emails from those employees would not have ever shown up from another analyst inside of there, meaning they could have spent an inordinate amount of time. And I'm sure all of you guys have asked a question at some point, had an analyst go dig for it, and then realized that the cost of what they were going through in order to go answer the question may not have even warranted the amount of time that you've spent on that. And so that's for us. What really changed is that you could lower the cost of asking a question. And when you can lower the cost of asking a question, you know what people do? They get really inquisitive and they start asking more of those questions inside of the system.
Well, I think that's amazing, Patrick. Thanks for sharing that. And Victor, what a great demo. I do want to zoom in on something that Patrick just said, because I think it's a key insight that a lot of people might miss. Most organizations have data. We can generate reports. But there's a real gap between having an answer, here's what happened last quarter, and understanding the so what. Why did it happen? What should we do about it? And what is the strategic context? That's where Gemini Enterprise goes beyond a traditional BI or chatbot system. So what makes this work isn't just natural language processing, it's context. Gemini Enterprise is internet-enabled, which means it understands real-time market trends and external factors. It's also organization-enabled, which means it deeply knows your business history, your internal data, your operational context. And it combines all of that to deliver what we call the contextual, so what? Actionable reasoning, not just data retrieval. So when Patrick or someone from the Thrive team asks Gemini, why do you think this happened? It's not just guessing. It's synthesizing internal data, external signals, and business context to produce a high-quality answer. That's the unlock. And it works for everyone on your team. We think about this as, are you a 1-click, a 2-click, or a many-click user? Patrick, I think you even mentioned this a bit earlier. You've got the power user, right, who may live in Looker and use SQL today, builds dashboards from scratch. And you've also got the occasional user who needs insights weekly for reports, but isn't necessarily in the data every day. And then you've got your non-technical users who may be a restaurant manager or a strategic director. They just want a direct answer to a business question. And Gemini Enterprise meets them where they are. Patrick, could you speak to your experience there?
Yeah, absolutely, happy to. We have all 3 kinds of those users in the organization, and that's what the difference for me was. Not just did we have all 3 kinds of users in the system, it was really how we transition people from being inquisitive but maybe not able or willing to go answer some of those other deeper questions that would have required some analyst hours. So for us, having all 3 of them, we absolutely have in the organization, and with Gemini Enterprise, we're looking to move more of them to be more of the inquisitive analyst analyst mind, but at the same time with the ease of just simply asking a question, maybe on a phone or something along those lines.
So there's one more thing I want to mention. We see the current state of most organizations. Maybe you're clicking through Dropbox, Slack, HubSpot, Google Drive, a dozen other tools, just trying to piece together the picture. Gemini Enterprise becomes the single platform for all of those tools. One place, all your data, all your context. You can stop digging across disconnected apps and start getting answers where you already work.
So let's bring it all together. What you've seen today is a story about how a restaurant group with no dedicated analysts that went from fragmented data and hour-long manual processes to conversational analytics in a matter of weeks. It's off the shelf, it's fast to deploy, and it's there, and it also delivers real ROI from day one, and it's built on tools that you're probably already using.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just add, honestly, if we can do this, I stand in front of you guys all today. I think any of you guys could do this. If you find the right partners, like we found with Cobri, and if you find the right tools, like we've had our Google team build for us, these things are achievable really by probably any SMB.
So the button's right there. Let's turn it on. If you'd like to connect with any of us after the session, our details are here on screen. We've got some time today for Q&A, but we'll be hanging around outside. Come say hi, ask questions, dig into anything you saw today. I believe there's also 2 breakout discussion groups later today for folks that may miss the Q&A. Yeah. Just to wrap this up, if you're looking to build what Patrick and Wiktor have, check out our AI starter kit for lean teams, where you walk through the steps you need to talk to your data or just get started in Gemini Enterprise today. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.